This is Philip Rostek speaking. This is an event that I'm calling My Life, Part 1. I'm not sure what makes a person do the kind of things that I'm embarking on right now. Perhaps it's just sheer vanity. It's most likely the case. My life is not extraordinary, and yet I feel compelled to tell you something about it. And so I'm just going to begin because that's what I want to do. I want to tell you about the things that I've loved the most in my life, and that is music and art, and the relationship between the two. It had a direct beginning in my life. It was inspired by my brother, Chucky. We called him Chucky. He was 8 years older than me, a brilliant scientist. And one of his favorite places was the Buell Planetarium in Pittsburgh, PA. The planetarium was a cool place. It had a Tesla coil. It had a pendulum clock that was hung from the ceiling, and it knocked over little pegs and kept some sort of time. Can't recall much more about it than that. But the main feature was a domed room where they had sky shows. My brother Chuck loved the night sky. He had made his own telescope when he was just a teenager and would show me night constellations in the summertime and point out various stars and the planet Mars or Venus. And so when we went to a sky show, we were seated, and when the lights went out, a large projector came up from the center of the room. It looked like a huge insect or something like that. And while this was happening, they played the first movement of Beethoven's Symphony No. 3. And soon all the lights that were out exploded into the night sky of the universe above us. And that connection between the stars and Beethoven's music and the cosmic effect that it had on me, it was instilled by my brother. I'll never forget it. It was so dramatic. And so that was my first experience, connecting the night sky with Beethoven. It made me think about classical music in a very positive way. I was only a youngster then, maybe about 8, something like that. Soon I would hear the Nutcracker Suite by Tchaikovsky at Christmas time, and they were so beautiful, and I was so impressed by them. Those were my first real musical experiences. This whole thing was augmented then by my mother, who bought one of the first stereo units. She loved French provincial furniture, fruit wood, and that was the kind of furniture that contained this stereo unit that played 33 1/3 LP records so beautifully. We joined the Columbia Record Club and bought 12 records And if you did that, you could get once a month, you could get a new record for 12 months. And since my brother was knowledgeable about these things, he picked out the records. Rudolf Serkin playing Brahms' first piano concerto with George Sell. Beethoven Symphony No. 4 and 5. Schubert Symphony No. 5 and 8. The 14 Waltzes by Chopin. Alexander Berlowski played them beautifully. And a very special record for me was an album called Clair de Lune by Philippe Entremont, playing the solo piano music of Claude Debussy. It was really special because it was so pictorial. A cathedral that came up from the bottom of the ocean and rang its bell before it descended back into the depths and disappeared. Amazing. Reflections on the water, so beautiful. L'Île Joyeuse. Even as a maybe 12-year-old kid, I knew that it was erotic music. I liked it. I also liked especially the Chopin waltzes. They were so emotionally straightforward and so clean, but I did hear dissonance for the first time, and it shocked me when I first heard them. He couldn't mean that. And then, after I listened to the records over and over, those were the parts of Chopin that I started to like the most. And so I had begun to educate my ears with this great gift that my mother had brought into the house. I should contextualize all of this by saying I had a great childhood. It was a beaver-cleaver kind of nuclear family situation. A mother who loved being a homemaker, a dad who worked every day and not working would be inconceivable, an older brother who was a very smart scientist, who for me was like a Merlin. And being 8 years older than me, there was no sibling rivalry. He taught me how to play chess, and we would listen to these great records over and over as we played chess on the living room floor beside the stereo unit. It was all very educational. And not only was it educational to listen to the music, I read the back of the album covers, which were very detailed and very well researched about the life of the composer, the time in which the music was composed, what was going on in the world at that time, and how the music might be a reaction to that. It all made a lot of sense. And this preparation, for me, was a very big deal. It laid the foundation, this relationship between art and music, it laid the foundation for me to be a creative person to the best of my ability. During the rest of the year, more records came in. One of them was Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun by Claude Debussy. All in all, one of my very favorite pieces of music. It's so perfect. And the record album cover was a painting by Renoir called In the Meadow. Various shades of blue surrounded a little lady in a landscape who wore a shawl and was inside a world of complete paradise. And so I knew all about Impressionism in one swoop. I knew what it sounded like. I knew what it looked like. And in my early attempts to be an artist, those things affected me very much when I went to college at the State University of Pennsylvania, Penn State, and decided to take up art. It was a good decision. I had started to take piano lessons when I was 16 from Mrs. Doyle. We had found her through friends who went to the same church as we did. She taught mostly first graders, but she took me on even though I was 16 and started to become very interested in music. We got up to the point where I struggled through a few pages of a Mozart sonata, and I knew that I couldn't do that. I had no real ability to sight read or translate music from a page. I was, however, very good at improvising. This was acknowledged. And so I took that ability to make things up and took that into the world of the visual arts. It was a good decision, like I said. And when I went to Penn State, it was a very good place for me to go because in that school, creative freedom was a given. The ability to self-generate was equated as talent, and I could do that. And so I enjoyed, especially the second year of school when that creative freedom opened up. The first year, with foundation courses, and my first course in survey art history was not easy. But I think we should, at that point, end here, and we'll start my life part 2 next.